We're excited to be here with you this afternoon. Today, we're going to be talking about a workflow for creating and using a digital twin or a digital model. There's so many different terms for these days, but creating something digitally that represents the real world and doing that for complex infrastructure projects using Trimble tools, including SketchUp, Scan Essentials, Quadri, and Trimble Connect. Trevor's going to kick things off with a brief introduction to Trimble, let you know a little bit about who Trimble is. I know that in my day-to-day work, I find a lot of people who are SketchUp users who've never actually heard of Trimble or didn't actually realize that SketchUp is owned by a company called Trimble. So we'll give you a little background there. And we'll talk about our wider civil engineering and construction toolbox. I'll talk a little bit more about SketchUp and Scan Essentials. And Adrian's going to jump in and talk to you about Quadri. Kyle and Adrian are going to do a brief workflow demonstration to show how all of these things can tie in together, be used together. And we'll wrap things up with something that I'm excited about. Is a case study of how Caltrans is using Quadri today. It's always great to see how our customers are implementing these tools on real projects in the real world. And then we'll get into questions and answers. Anything that you may have, we'll be happy to talk about. It's actually been a big week here at Trimble with a couple of announcements. The first being the Quadri is now available here in North America. We're very excited about that. And so you'll be some of the first in North America to really see what Quadri is all about. And we've also announced that SketchUp Studio, which is one of our SketchUp subscription offerings, now includes both Scan Essentials, which we'll see here in a little bit, and V-Ray rendering software from Chaos Group, who we've partnered with. So a lot of new tools, a lot of great new offerings, and we're excited to be able to share all of this with you today. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Trevor.
Thanks, Scott. Always want to start off with a tech issue. Let's start off with a little bit about Trimble. Our passion for innovation, combined with 40+ years of digital insights, make Trimble uniquely qualified to solve our customers' most complex physical world problems. As you all know, DOTs and the Army Corps of Engineers have some of the most complex projects in the world. So how do we do it? Key to our approach is the delivery of purpose-built solutions that integrate complex, real-time data throughout full project life cycles, providing a seamless system workflow where innovation meets action, software meets hardware, office meets the field. And the result? We're helping customers around the globe to optimize operations across a wide range of industry end markets. So let's take a look at how we got here, the Trimble story. Way back in 1978, certain that positioning and navigation technology would become a fundamental part of our everyday lives, Charlie Trimble formed what would become the world's first commercialized GPS company. Based in a small office in Silicon Valley, Trimble was the cornerstone of what would become an entire new industry. During our history, Trimble leadership has remained remarkably consistent. The first 20 years, under the leadership of Charlie Trimble, was built around technology. The point of differentiation was pure innovation. Trimble was an exceptionally innovative company during that time and strategically expanded the application of position-centric information across multiple industries and diverse markets. In 1999, with the arrival of Steve Berglund, Trimble began to transition our point of differentiation from pure innovation to overlaying an industry workflow focus that significantly enhanced our technology. By seamlessly connecting the network of operations throughout project life cycles, the common value provided by our technology solutions became productivity gain. And last year, leadership was transferred to Rob Painter. While respecting and building on Trimble's 40+ years of success, Rob is driven to further increase connectivity across project life cycles in the industries we serve to give our customers the best opportunity for success in an ever-evolving world. Driven by innovation, we continue to find new ways to connect our physical and digital worlds, as we have done since day one. We look forward to sharing some of these new ways with you today. We are truly transforming the way the world works by optimizing task productivity at the convergence of the physical and digital worlds. We achieve this by leveraging deep roots in positioning, sensing, modeling, and analytics, providing the right combination of collaboration and interoperability to help users worldwide make intelligent decisions, solve complex problems, and improve operating results and safety. This narrative is exactly the thought process I went through as the West Coast Chief of Construction for the US Coast Guard. I was frustrated with the antiquated tools and processes that seemed to have changed little in 50 years. I knew there had to be a better way. But in an industry as complex and messy as construction, how could technology truly transform an industry? And the answer to that question is exactly what Trimble stands for and why I came to Trimble. By connecting the physical equipment in the field to the office through software products, Trimble is transforming the construction industry. Trimble's legacy as a construction hardware company has earned the respect of industry. And now, with modeling and optimization tools, Trimble is connecting all the disparate phases of a project, allowing for a truly streamlined workflow for construction projects. We started as a hardware company, but we are now a full stack software, consulting, and hardware provider. Our integrated technologies and innovative solutions are helping customers increase productivity and profitability across multiple industries around the world. First, we have building design, construction, and operation, which most of you are involved with. We also have civil engineering and construction, which overlaps quite a bit. We also target our agriculture and transportation and geospatial. As you can see, we're deeply rooted in all project types across your project portfolio and strive to drive success in what you work on every day. Trimble Civil Engineering and Construction Solutions make it possible to construct, maintain, and operate the world's roads, railways, and other civil infrastructure quickly, safely, and efficiently. From concept to design, to build and maintain, we give customers control with a forward-thinking continuum of solutions and services. Whether it's roadway or runway construction, flood control, MILCON projects, or VA hospitals, we are focused on helping you get your specific projects done right. The challenges you live with daily are not yours alone. The entire industry is facing productivity challenges. Too much rework, too many projects delayed, and too many over budget. These numbers are staggering, but they're real. In my role as a chief of construction, it became the norm for me to expect a project to be delayed and for there to be several costly change orders during a project. It's not because the engineers and managers on my team weren't good enough. They were the best. It's because they didn't have the digital tools that connected them to the data and enabled them to make informed decisions quickly. Sadly, time and time again, my team was subject to using archaic processes that cost taxpayers money, time, and quality. I hated seeing my team struggle like this and desperately sought the best tools I could provide for them. This path ultimately led me here to Trimble because of how they were solving these industry issues. Trimble's answer to these industry challenges is the full continuum of construction solutions. It's our vision to be the essential ecosystem for the entire lifecycle of all of the world's infrastructure. Only Trimble serves the entire project lifecycle, supporting customers at every phase with a continuum of services and solutions built for success. So our customers can approach every project with unmatched confidence. Our unique BIM solution for civil engineering and construction projects significantly improves efficiency and productivity while minimizing errors, waste, and cost at every stage of the project, from planning and design to construction, operation, and maintenance. Thank you for your time today. I'll now hand the mic back over to Scott, who's going to talk to you more about SketchUp, one of my favorite digital tools.
Great, thanks, Trevor. Excuse me. So some of you are probably very familiar with SketchUp, some maybe not so. If you are familiar with SketchUp, you'll see that we got a new logo this year. So we were all excited about that, making us all of the products in the Trimble family looking a little bit more similar. If you're not familiar with SketchUp, what you're seeing here, this image on the screen is SketchUp. It is what you can get from SketchUp. This building happens to be a restaurant in Denver that our team modeled when SketchUp 2021 was released last November. And a few things to sort of point out here. For those who are new to SketchUp, SketchUp is an intuitive 3D modeler that's very easy to learn and use. Really, fundamentally, that's what it is. In this image, you can really see that it can be used to model almost anything. You'll see in here that we have buildings, we have roads, we have vehicles, there are even some little people down there and some flower planters. So whatever you can imagine, you can most likely model it in SketchUp. The other important thing to take away from this image, though, is that you can model those things at whatever level of detail makes sense for your project, for your whatever it is that you may be doing. That greenhouse is pretty detailed there on top of that restaurant where they grow all of their produce to then include in their dishes. But you'll see the red building kind of just above there is more of a massing. It's not nearly as detailed, and for a lot of use cases, you wouldn't need it to be particularly detailed. So take out of SketchUp what you need out of SketchUp. SketchUp models, like these 3D models that you're seeing here, are one of the many data types that can be used with our BIM for infrastructure tool, Quadri, that you're going to be seeing a little bit later on. Next slide, Trevor. In this image, we're seeing how we can actually tie some of these tools together a little bit more. What you're seeing there in the lower left is Trimble's X7 laser scanner. So what you could do is use that laser scanner, or really any laser scanner, in conjunction with SketchUp and the Trimble Scan Essentials extension for SketchUp. So this is a little add-on tool that can be bolted onto SketchUp. And all of a sudden, this is a request that's been out there for years, and we've finally got a solution for it. The ability to bring point clouds into SketchUp, use those point clouds for reference, use those point clouds to make measurements, or even to create models in SketchUp using those point clouds. It's a great new addition to the SketchUp tool and the SketchUp platform, and that's what we're going to talk about here next. Next slide, Trevor. SketchUp is really the flagship of a platform of tools that all work together, and you see some of them here on the screen. Layout is all about taking those 3D models that you've created in SketchUp, and if you need 2D output, if you need construction documents, or you're going to a public meeting where you need to sell your ideas, you can take your 3D model, your SketchUp model, and bring that into layout and create those exhibits as you need them. Style Builder is a way of simply making your model look the way you'd like to from an aesthetics perspective. Adjust the styles of the edges of those models that you're creating. Extension Warehouse is a place where you can get all kinds of additional add-on technology, kind of like what we're talking about with Scan Essentials. SketchUp is a horizontal tool. It's used across many different industries. But if you need specific tools for your industry or for your use, oftentimes, you can go to Extension Warehouse and just get a little bit of additional functionality, bolt that onto SketchUp, and go to town. And then 3D Warehouse, maybe, I don't know if it's the most important, but it's certainly and a very important one. 3D Warehouse is a repository of millions of SketchUp models. And one of the ideas behind 3D Warehouse is that in any sort of modeling, you never want to create something twice that you've created once. So whether that's you creating a model that is something that you can use over and over again, whether it's a hangar or a building or a barracks, whatever it may be, to be able to use that over and over again, not start from scratch every time. You can do that with SketchUp. You can also go to 3D Warehouse, take advantage of models that other SketchUp users have created, and use those in your models. With that, we'll go to the next slide, and I believe it's time for polling question number 1. Take it away, Kat. And so everybody, just to make sure that you're not sleeping on the job, we just need everybody to have a read of the questions and put your answer in there. And these questions are all related to the presentation today. We'll give you 30 seconds or so. Has that been about 30 seconds, Kat?
Yep, just about. We're going to end the poll now, and I'll share the results.
Great. Now I think I'm handing it over to Adrian after the poll.
Okay. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about now was the Quadri technology. So both Trevor and Scott had mentioned that, and one of the things that Scott had mentioned as well. Again, this is very newly released. So literally just did our announcement today. Brand new technology in that it's newly released for North America. But that said, the technology has been well established and been used in the Nordics for many years. So really, what is Quadri? One of the easiest ways to describe it is a platform for infrastructure information, facilitating access throughout the construction life cycle. So the graphic on the bottom left-hand side, that's the same one that Trevor showed before. And if you've ever seen a Trimble construction or software presentation, you've probably seen that. And that's our connected construction vision. And what that really equates to is having a single source of truth, a single central model at the center of that life cycle. And what that means then is that you have all of your, well, essentially when you send a design from early concept and design, we have technologies there that will optimize an alignment, then be able to send that into the design phase. But that's going to be essentially the genesis of a 3D model. So we're starting off with a 3D sort of construction workflow. And at the moment, the industry is very disparate. It's siloed. It's very hard to send data around. But what we wanted to do was create a technology or create a pathway to be able to have that model being used throughout the entire construction life cycle. So you can have someone out there in the field visualizing the model with our augmented reality tool. But the important point is that person is actually visualizing the exact same model that those machines are out there constructing. They're also connected to each other. So this connected construction continuum means that you can send models out to the field, you can send updates out to the field, but it's bidirectional. So you're actually getting data back from the field. So it's not just a one-way process anymore. We're now actually capturing intelligence and data from the field as the project is being constructed, and things such as metrics and progress have been fed into that model. So it's becoming this living and breathing model. And then as you get to the end of the construction, then you have what we're helping generate as a three-dimensional intelligent digital as-built. And that's what's going to be used for your own operate and maintain, from essentially managing the project, but having a truly valuable and usable digital as-built or digital representation of the project that can be used for decision-making, for data analysis, and actually be able to use that to help maintain the project moving forward. So in a nutshell, Quadri really does combine construction, planning and design, and maintenance and operations in one location, and having all of that data stored there, but then being able to disseminate that very easily to all the interested parties. Next slide. So one of the things the technology is very unique at is that it doesn't replace your existing workflows. What it does is it enhances them. So it stores the data in its single source of truth, in its object-oriented database, but there's no use of it having it there if you can't access it easily. And what we have are these sophisticated software connectors, which are part of the product, that let you access that model. So where the data is stored itself is non-proprietary. So we have an ISO conforming database, which is an object-oriented database, meaning that you're only sharing updates. You're not sharing full files. We're going away from the archaic file approach where you don't know if you have the latest version, the latest files, where they are. With Quadri in place in a construction project, you know where everything is, and that's always going to be the most latest version. And the benefit of that is that the connectors enable you to use and continue to use your own experience and knowledge with your own software. So if you're designing with something with SketchUp, or if you're designing something with Civil 3D, it's a data aggregator, a data collator as well. So it stores all that data, but those bidirectional connectors mean that you can make a change to your design in SketchUp. And this is the workflow that we're going to be actually showing, where that model can then be sent into the Quadri database and then essentially built into the rest of the data set, be it construction data or GIS and utility information or whatever. It's going to host all that information there, but you can easily update that model and update those changes via those connectors. Next slide. So as far as where Trimble, where the Quadri sits in our Trimble ecosystem, part of it is really to aid the office to field connectivity. So as we know, it's storing that 3D data, but it's pointless having it stored there if you can't get access to it. And Trimble's building out tools to be able to help visualize that model, help gather data from the field to enhance the model itself, and of course, use the model for machine control and actually construct the project. But then also for that project to become a digital, or for Quadri to host a digital as build, it needs to have all of the data there, like we talked about, from construction, from asset, from buildings. And by doing that, that means you can have everything talking to each other, or at least you can be able to see that data alongside each other. They're not sitting along these silos that they have been in the past. And tools that we're creating now are very powerful ways of utilizing that connected construction continuum that we talked about, and being able to enhance and use that model throughout the process. Next slide. So here's where this is where we're going. So what we're actually doing here is visualizing a model that is stored in the Quadri database that has your alignment and construction data, it has your asset utility information, it has buildings and structures in there, all in the one location. And all of those connectors to those different softwares means that everyone can be actually modifying and editing and actually sending their parts of the model into that one single location. So that's how it gets to this one single model, this one single source of truth. And that little video on the right-hand side there shows exactly what's happening there. You've got a project where you've got the road construction, you've got your underground utilities, you've got your road surfaces, and all of that becomes the actual digital as-built. So that data is used not only to help construct the project in the first place, but then that's what's actually used as part of the maintenance and operations further down the track. Next slide. And I believe I hand it over to Kyle for his part of the presentation.
Yep. Thank you, Adrian. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Great. So I want to quickly introduce SketchUp at a pretty basic level to get an understanding of how easy it is to create 3D geometry and powerful visuals. Whether it's maintenance buildings, levees, bridges, hangars, or roadways, the same core concepts in creating geometry apply. The way SketchUp works, we're going to create lines that connect, create planes, and then we can extrude that vertically and develop 3D volumes. So buildings, bridges, everything is similar. So for this example, let's say we've got a 50-foot by 100-foot footprint of a building, and we know it's 30 feet tall to the eave, and maybe it's got a gable roof. So everything in SketchUp has real dimension. So if I want to activate a drawing tool, maybe just a pencil or a line tool, in this case, I'll do a rectangle. And if I want it to be 50 feet by 100 feet, I can just type in that information, which you'll see in the bottom right corner. Press enter. Now I've got a plane, and I can extrude this up, let's say 30 feet. Now I've got a cube, and we can verify, the square footage of this, 5,000 square feet. We've got our facade here, that's 100 feet. And maybe we want to start to alter this geometry to give it a better building form. So in this case, if we've got a gable roof and we want to move it up 10 feet, give it a little bit of pitch, and we can use these same tools to create a little more detail if necessary. So for example, if we've got a door here, 3 foot by 7 foot door, and maybe a collection of windows on this facade, we can copy them pretty quickly and even start to put in some materiality. So maybe this building is a brick, and we want to look at some glazing options. Just a couple clicks of the mouse, and even some roofing. So, in under a minute, I can go ahead and I can make this building that's pretty representational, really quick, very simple, and I can start to copy that around my site, especially if I'm using the same sort of building, right? So that's really SketchUp in its simplest term. Whatever you're creating geometry, it's just a collection of lines, planes, and then we can start to alter it as much as we need. So now I want to jump kind of in how we're going to use SketchUp in addition to 3D scan data by using Trimble Scan Essentials extension to produce some SketchUp geometry from the points that we've gathered. I can then place my model into Quadri and get that situated on the right area for this project. So for this example, I've already got a scan introduced. I'm going to click on this scene to activate it. So just so you're aware, I've created a couple scenes which are just kind of images in time. They're going to save these camera angles. They're going to save some of the geometry that we've put onto tags. And it's an ability for me to be able to organize my model better so I can continue to model, but also have some great views and documentation that I can export. So you can see here, I've got a pretty robust point cloud scan. This is of a highway corridor. So pretty obviously a highway coming through. We've got some buildings. If we zoom in, we can even see the trees and even the line work on this on-ramp. The great thing about the point cloud in here is that everything is measurable. So I can see how wide my bridge is here. I can even place cameras onto each one of the points. So if I want to see what's going on here, everything in SketchUp can snap to these points, and I can kind of see what's going on, on this overpass here without even modeling anything, just bringing the information into SketchUp. So for this exercise, we're going to say that we've got a building in this example that works really well for us. We want to replicate that building further down the highway, but we don't really know the best place for it yet. So we've got a scan. We're going to focus on this building and use this. You'd use the same workflow for a bridge, river locks, hangar renovations, really anything that you can model in SketchUp. We can use Scan Essentials to make sure that we're accurately modeling the existing conditions. So for this example, I've got 3 buildings here that I want to focus on a little more. And this building is actually the one that I want to focus on directly. So I want to get rid of the rest of the information just for my modeling preferences. So I can actually create a clipping box, which is just kind of a cropping box to get rid of some of the information. There's a couple different ways to do that. I've gone ahead and I've already created one. You'll see that I've activated here. And I want to go ahead and just quickly right click and activate this clipping box to get rid of all the unnecessary information. We're just focusing on this one building. So now I've got this information and I can start modeling off of the points. So SketchUp's not going to just model it directly from these points. It's not going to drape geometry over it. We're using these points as guides to create our building. So however much detail you need, you can even see in here, we've even got mullions, we've got the glazing, a bunch of trees. So as much information as you need to include, you can go ahead and model that. So for this example, I want to just go ahead and get the footprint of this building. You can see here that it's going to want to snap to a point. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a pretty generic rectangle. And I want to just get the extents of my building using the push-pull tool. And it's going to snap to the points in this building. So as I maneuver around, I can make sure that we're getting this footprint of the building pretty accurate. And even up to the roof line. So I've actually created this and saved it in a scene already. So I'm going to skip to this and show you the advantages of this. So I've got a good footprint that I'm pretty happy with. But one of the great tools of Scan Essentials is I can go in here and I can look at it, an inspection map. So I can see how accurate my footprint is down to the millimeter. So of course, green means I'm pretty good. Red maybe means I'm a little off. Again, depending on how accurate you need your model to be. And we can change these sliders as well. So I'm pretty happy with how detailed my footprint is now and how it's lining up. Everything is pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn that off. Now that my boundaries are good enough, I can add some detail as needed to visualize my project properly. So I can see pretty clearly in this scan, there's some good openings for the windows, and there's also openings into the parking level. So I'm going to change my view a little bit to better model these window openings. And we can also change from a perspective into a parallel projection. So now I can use this line work and kind of continue to create as much information as I need. So if I want to snap to the window openings, I can really quickly do that. And then again, introduce materials if need be. If this is the glazing like we show, really quickly get an idea of this building. So I've gone ahead and I've actually created a little more detail with this. I'm going to go ahead and skip to those scenes as well, just for time's sake. So for this example, again, I've just added more line work for these openings. There's a little bit of recesses. We can start to get the thickness of the walls and really start to get a much better understanding of this building, our garage level, pedestrian door, and then our overall glazing. So I can add more detail on this if I'd like, which of course I've gone ahead and I've added the glazing. Maybe it's important to get some views out of the site. Maybe you're overlooking a maintenance yard or you're on base. It totally depends on how much detail that you need. So in addition to glazing, I can also add some entourage. We've got some trees in this model. We've got a parking lot associated with it as well. So again, I've kind of created a little more geometry because I want to make sure maybe I've got some vehicles on site and I want to see the vehicles that fit in this property are going to be the same fleet that I've got further down the highway. So I've created an apron. And again, the cool part of SketchUp is since everything is drawn in a real dimension, I can click here and get a square footage of how much my parking spot is, and also just get a run of this dimension here. So 86 feet is going to be able to give me a decent amount of space for my fleet. So my next scene is I've actually gone and I've grabbed some of these vehicles. So this kind of goes back to what Scott mentioned earlier in the presentation with taking advantage of our 3D warehouse. I'm just focused on the building. I don't want to go and spend all the time modeling these great vehicles here, but they might be essential for my visualization purposes or to get this project approved or to just get a better understanding and get project buy-off from maybe some of my colleagues who aren't experts in this, and blueprints and floor plans don't really work for them. They're more of a visual learner. So to get this information, if I want to launch 3D warehouse and I can search for something, in this case, I've searched for just a Department of Transportation vehicle, and you can see the models that others have taken the time to go ahead and model. So if you're in the presentation from North Carolina, good for you. There's a whole plethora of vehicles that have already been designed for you that you can just go ahead, click, download them directly into the model. So that's how I got all of this detailed information. I don't have to spend all the time finding all of that. I can just make sure that everything I've got fits onto my apron nice, and I can even start to introduce a little more detail like a helipad and a helicopter. One more thing I want to touch base with before handing it over to Adrian is this ability to, again, put as much detail as required. So if you're concerned with materiality, for here we see that we've just got kind of two different stucco materials. I can also create new materials or custom materials, which you can actually see, the state of North Carolina has their logo on this fleet that I've downloaded from the 3D warehouse, but I can also go ahead and create custom geometry if need be. So this could be, a photograph, it could be a scan, it could be really any sort of image file you can bring into SketchUp to get your design across. So I've got a texture in here that I've already brought in. And I want to just show kind of how easy it is to place these textures. And again, as custom as you want to make it. So I've got a great image that was a request for this project. Go Army, beat Navy, of course. And I can alter this, as much as possible. If I need to move it around, if I need to adjust the scale, if I need to rotate it, as much detail as is required, I can go ahead and put that into my model. So very quickly, that's how we would use Scan Essentials to create a building that we'd like to duplicate, or to just have a good understanding of what our site constraints are. Because like we showed in the overall scan, we can get a really good idea of what's going on, without modeling anything, and getting a lot of detail, and very quickly able to orbit around and see everything that we've got in this pretty extensive scan. So once I've got a model that I'm pretty happy with, the next part in the workflow is how am I going to get this information, to maybe someone else that's collaborating on the project, a consultant, maybe even the owner, someone just to get project buy-off. In this case, I can take my model after I save it. I can actually share it to Trimble Connect, which is our cloud sharing portion of the Trimble, and I can just go ahead and publish my model to a project. And in that case, my collaborators can grab this information and put it into the next program as needed. So at this point, I'm done with my model. I'm happy with it, and I'd save it, and I'm going to pass it back over to Adrian to show us the next step in the process.
Okay, thanks for that, Kyle. So, what we're looking at here is the Quadri interface, and as we talked about before, it's a data aggregator, it's a single source of truth, but it's also a very powerful visualization tool. And if you remember, the goal of this tool is to assist with the construction process, but then also to become the digital as-built. And it can really only do that if you're able to bring in all of the other important information of a particular project. So what we're going to look at here is, again, this is a particular construction project where we've got some roads and bridges. Bridges were designed with Tekla, the roads were designed with Civil 3D. But we want to start building this out to a true digital twin, or a true sort of digital as-built of the project. So one of the things that we're going to be doing, of course, is bringing in your GIS and utility information, but of course, buildings are very much an important part of that as well. So what we did was, on the left-hand side here, we have what are called tasks. And the system itself is all built around tasks. And what they do is they provide a bit of they provide visibility into the project. And what that means too is that there's traceability. So anything you do to the project itself, be it changing an attribute, be it importing a file, is always logged here. So one of the things that I've already kind of done was just to import the building from SketchUp that Kyle just created. So here's that same sort of building. And again, we've just got that in here, so it pops up as an object in the tasks list. And then if I go back to which is effectively going to be my final design, but then we want to start building that out. So now what I can actually do is grab that building and actually drag it into the interface here, and it's going to now use the exact specifications of that building in my project. Now I can specify, of course, exactly where that is or where that goes. But the important point is now you can start to see how Quadri is tying all of this data together, because now we have our alignment construction information, we have some trees and things, and we're going to have a bit of a point cloud as well that I'll talk about in a second. But what we're able to do now is really start to build this out to become a very useful digital as-built. And what's important too is that any of the metadata that Kyle had built into that model, or any other objects within the Quadri database, you can actually query and actually see those in the project itself. And then even if I add in my point cloud information, then we're going to start to see this is how you can really hopefully see how it's tying it all together. Now you can kind of see we've got obviously the trees and all those kind of things, but we could bring in that data from Scan Essentials, be able to visualize that in the for you effectively for your existing, but then have your proposed and your design data in there and all in the same place. And obviously we can turn on and off different things. But this hopefully gives you a pretty good understanding of how we're able to do that. Now, one of the other things I talked about was the connectors. And so the point of that connector is that I could actually bring that I brought that object in without even having to leave my program. So if I go and edit that task, now let's say, for instance, I want to change something about that building, I can actually go back into the SketchUp here, and what it's going to actually go and do is load up SketchUp, and then actually bring in that model, and then we can go and look at that, and then be able to see so I could make changes to this model. I could change orientation. I could do any of those changes using this. It's the exact same SketchUp interface that Carl was just showing you. And then when I save that, then that's going to be reflected back over here. And as you notice, I didn't leave Quadri at all. So what it's doing is leveraging those bidirectional sophisticated software connectors we talked about. So there's a very quick way of showing how the connectivity between those products exists and how we can actually start to build out our digital as-built, combining all of the different data sources for the particular project. And I think that's where we hand it back over to, well, actually, sorry, we have a polling question too.
There it is. One more check to make sure that everybody's on their toes. Question number 2 is up there. We'll leave it up for maybe 60 seconds. Maybe Kat will let us know when she's going to close it down.
Yeah, I'll let you all know. All right, I think we are good to go.
There it is. I think we're going to hand it back to Adrian to talk a little bit about Caltrans and how they've been piloting Quadri right here in North America for us.
Absolutely. Okay. So one of the, we talked about Quadri being released today, but what we've been doing over the last sort of few months is really piloting the technology on a number of different projects. And one of them was definitely with Caltrans and with Granite as the contractor. So one of the things that Quadri does, as we know, is become that single source of truth, but also be able to provide visibility into that project. And you can only really do that by collaboration. And for the new, these new sort of contract mechanisms we're seeing, design build and CMGC and progressive design build, all of those require collaboration. And one of the best ways to share that information is either by sending a web link or be able to share a file with someone that actually is able to see that with their own Quadri license, essentially. But with the consumers project here, we were doing a couple of bridge replacements, and that's the actual project where we're just showing in Quadri. And what we're able to do was really improve collaboration by being able to visualize 3D data in the field. And of course, that 3D data is what was utilized is what's stored within the Quadri model. So what we did then was apply that to that project. The same model that was used for machine control, we also had the team out there visualizing it with our site vision technology, which again, as you know, is visualizing the model that's stored within Quadri as well. Next slide. So what we ended up doing was extending the return on investment of that 3D data, because the client at the time only had some 3D data, but what we ended up doing was working with them to generate three-dimensional data sets for bridges, for road work, for underground utilities, all of those things together in the one place. And then they wanted to be able to visualize that in the field, but then understand that that's then all stored in the Quadri database. So there were some significant benefits of being able to do that by effectively faster resolution of design build items. So things such as, being able to create abutments between, or really the intersection between your bridges and roads. And we'll have a bit of a talk about that in a second when we look at the models, because you're able to provide a bridge model to a road designer to be able to see exactly where that interface is. Cost reduction, because you've got, essentially the minimum hours reduced for needing for a contractor to actually go and redesign work, because if you're able to provide them with a more detailed model in the first place that they're able to construct, or maybe just slightly modify versus recreating the whole thing, there's a significant benefit there. And we did see all of these benefits realized. Next slide. So here's the little example I wanted to talk about. So we've got my bridge model, which is in Connect. And again, this is the same conduit that we can use to visualize the model with Sight Vision. And as you saw with Kyle's presentation, that Connect repositories where we can actually have all of the SketchUp data as well. In this case, we've got the bridge and we've got our road designs. And there was a bit of a gap between those two. And that's really, really common. And that's just because the bridge designer is doing their own design, the road designer is doing their own design. They don't know where that interface is. But what if we could provide that full model to the road designer to say, okay, here is precisely where my bridge ends, so you can make your design finish right up to that. Because at the moment, it's typically left up to the contractors to be able to do that, and then someone has to figure it out. But that's just a very simple example of being able to have, or the power of being able to share information. Next slide. And then visualization is a core component of that. So we talked about creating the digital as-built, and having all of those different data sources combined in one location. Here was a very powerful example of being able to visualize the 3D model that's stored in the Quadri database. There was a high pressure jet fuel line running along the entire project here. It was buried, of course, and they had just some survey flags that were sitting there, and we were out there, some were fallen over, whatever, but we could actually visualize that in the field with the tool, with the Sight Vision tool, to be able to see, which, as we know, is a connected device to the ecosystem, to be able to see what it looks like from different angles, its depth, to be able to help visualize that. And even in the top right-hand corner, that little example there just shows the abutment sticking out over the roadway. And that was actually far further than they had thought, or that they could interpret from the designs. So being able to visualize that in the field is very powerful, because you're able to see that. And things such as if you brought in that SketchUp model, we could actually see what that house is going to look like from different viewpoints with the tool, because you're using that augmented reality and the perspective control that it has. Next slide. So for this particular data, we used the 3D design data for machine control, for survey, for augmented reality, and then stored the entire model in the Quadri database. And as we mentioned, it's going away from that file-based approach. So it's an object-oriented storage, meaning that you're only necessary to share the updates. But then collaboration is a core component of that. But like we said, the beauty of building this model out now, and then overlaying it with your buildings and structures and all of those things, that's going to become a very powerful, intelligent digital as-built for the project, which can be used for your maintenance and operations. Next slide. And this is where we're going. So this is the final design. This is the, essentially what we would call close to the digital as-built. Now we're going to start to build that out, and overlay that with the buildings and structures and all those kinds of things. But as far as the alignment construction side is done, that's really what we're looking at here. And on the right-hand side, you probably can't see it, but there's a few little commentaries, things there. That's where we can send a web link to someone to say, right, here's my model, have a look at it, provide an input, assign tasks to people to look at it. But like I said, the main point to take home here is that this is where it's going to become that main repository for all of that different data, to be able to truly become that digital as-built for the project itself. And I believe we have one more polling question.
I'll give about 10 more seconds to respond to the poll.
I don't know that we said it before. We probably should have. We're going to get into questions and answers next. And for the attendees, there is a Q&A box or panel that you can access through your controls at the bottom of the screen. If you've got questions and answers, please go ahead and type them in there. And Kat will be monitoring those.
Sure will. All right, I think we are all set with the poll. And we are ready to move on to some Q&A. I've seen a couple questions come through, and I think we have just enough time to cover a few of them. One of the questions was, do we have to use Trimble Connect to use Quadri?
You want to talk about that, Adrian? Yep.
Yeah, sure. So yes and no. I mean, what we actually do is at the moment when we sell Quadri, you actually get Connect with it. They are intrinsically linked, just because of the way that where the data is stored in Quadri. But yes, that's why, and that's essentially why we do have the ability to, or sorry, when we do sell Quadri, it does include Connect. So you don't have to use it, but you know, if you've already got some of your data and all those kinds of things, you can very easily share that data between Connect and Quadri and be able to use that as a conduit to for any other softwares you may be using.
Awesome. Another question asked, we have limited internet access. Can we still use these tools?
Maybe we can do a round robin on that. Certainly for SketchUp and Scan Essentials, if you do not have internet access or limited internet access, you can still use our tools. Things like 3D Warehouse, where you can get all of those models, that might not be available to you. But in terms of using the functionality of SketchUp, even Scan Essentials, that should not be an issue. And Adrian, what do you think about with Quadri?
So with Quadri, it is a server-based solution. So we are leveraging the cloud for where the data is stored. But that said, because you're only sending the updates, and you actually do have a duplicate on your computer, your PC or laptop or wherever you're working on it. So the beauty of that is then you're only sending those updates. So you can actually be working on it, working with your designs, and then syncing that to the Quadri database. So it does need connectivity to be able to do that. So you know, it doesn't need it all the time, but yes, you do need connectivity at some point to be able to sync that, to be able to make sure that that cloud version has all the latest data. But it does give you the opportunity to, you know, if you need to work for a few days on that data, and then sync it at a later time, then that's still absolutely possible as well.
And my suggestion is, if anybody has specific situations that they want to discuss, to reach out to one of us, and we can look at the specifics more closely and figure out a solution for you.
Good point.
And
Yeah.
Scott, I think it's worth mentioning too that SketchUp can be used on a tablet. It's not confined to just a laptop or a desktop. So it is quite a portable tool.
Well, and SketchUp Viewer as of today, SketchUp Viewer can be used on a tablet. So that means that you can take your SketchUp model in the field, be able to look at it, be able to measure on it, do those sorts of things. You can't create or edit a model on a tablet in SketchUp today, April 8th, 2021. We'll see what happens with that, but that's as of today, that's what the situation is.
Great, thank you guys so much. I think that's all the time that we actually have for questions today, but if any of you still have any remaining questions, feel free to reach out. I'm going to share our sales reps information. So feel free to contact Sean. And I just want to thank you all for joining us, and thank you to our presenters. We hope that this webinar has been helpful to you and your organization.